you had a quote in the book that I absolutely loved, which was, the goal isn't to avoid hard moments. The goal is to build an athlete who can handle it.
Yes. I think we all know life is full of hard moments, right? So if we're doing our job as coaches and sport is building better people, we know those people are going to hit hard moments in their life. So what can they look back on that they learned through sport to handle that moment in life?
Welcome back to After the Routine. I'm your host, Rochelle Provo, and I'm here with the author of the new book, Raise the Athlete, Not the Pressure, Becky Acra. Becky is a coach, mental performance consultant, and is completing her master's degree in sport and performance psychology. For more than 26 years, she has helped athletes and families navigate the pressures of sport while remembering that the ultimate goal isn't just athletic success. It's about preparing young people for who they'll become when the game or the sport is over. As a mom of 3 athletes herself, Becky is passionate about helping young people develop an identity that extends beyond their performance. So thank you so much for being a part of this, Becky.
Thank you so much for having me. And what a nice introduction. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So I'd love to dive more into, how did you get into the sport of cheerleading?
That's a great question. It was not your traditional path. I actually come from a family of basketball players. Well, let me start by saying
Okay.
this. I come from the generation of whatever sport it was, whatever season it was, that's what we were playing, right? So I'm the youngest
Yeah.
of 2 brothers. And I remember when it was soccer season, we were playing soccer and we were so excited for soccer. And then it was basketball season and, oh, yeah, let's go basketball. So I grew up playing every sport I could get my hands on. But on the basketball court, watching my brothers play and growing up in a basketball gym, I was always drawn to the cheerleaders. So while I would love watching the game and I still love watching basketball, I found myself just really connected to what the cheerleaders were doing. So I had an opportunity as a junior high student. I think I was a 7th grader. The school was starting a cheerleading program. And I thought, all
Yeah.
right, this is it. Like, this is my moment. And I remember, I think they took 6 or 7 kids on the team. There were maybe 45, 50 of us who tried out. And I was one of the lucky chosen ones. And that really ignited a passion in me that I knew I had interest in, but I had no idea how much I would love it. And so 7th
Yeah.
grade started my cheerleading journey. And then along came competitive cheerleading in high school. And I had to get my hands on that. I'm a competitor by nature. I've always loved competing in anything I do, whether that is a card game. I mean, my poor children are like, we don't want to play against mom. I love competing. And so when that all-star world came to be, I was like, all right, I got to do this. And so I'll age myself here a little bit, but I started competitive cheer in 1997 and I cheered for
Okay.
Desert Valley All-Stars in Southern California in the Coachella Valley. And I knew that that was my passion. I also competed with my high school team. So I kind of double duty between the all-star competitive world and my high school cheer team. And then I got to
Yeah.
college. I went to University of Arizona and they were co-ed and I had always been a base and a back spot. And all of a sudden I found my job was sort of taken by the boys. And that's when I jumped into coaching. I was 18 years old when I took my first coaching job and found an absolute love for the coaching side of things. And honestly haven't stopped since.
I love that. And then what about the coaching did you like?
I think for me, it was just being a part of other people's success has always been so fun. It's part of what I've loved about team sports. I love that you can't do it alone. And so then being able to be on the coaching side of that and not only grow the skills, right? The X's and O's and the technique, but in order to be successful, you have to be part of something larger than self, which is something that was preached to me forever and ever growing up, having a dad that was a professional basketball player and a coach himself. Teamwork was in my DNA. And so being able to then show other people the importance of teamwork and the magic that can come from teamwork, I don't think there's anything like it. And I don't think you can understand it until you're coaching how special that is. While there's a lot of coaching that it's like, I just wish I could be out there because then I'm in some sort of control, right? Because you're also are relinquishing a lot of control as a coach. Being able to step back and empower these young athletes to go do it was something that I found so appealing from a really young age.
No, I love that so much. I agree. I took time off coaching when I went to university. And when I came back, I was like, I didn't realize how much I missed this, right?
Mhm.
It's such it's such an important part. And then to like walk into the gym and be like, okay, everything stops at the door. And like all of like the things I was worried about and things I'm stressed about at work and that like it stops. And I just get to hang out with these awesome kids.
Yes.
And I get to like coach some really cool things that I love. And I think being able to show that passion is really cool.
And being able to learn from those kids too, right? The longer you coach, the more you realize I'm learning from you as much as you guys are learning from me. And that's a really cool thing as coaches that we get to do that. Not every job offers that opportunity.
Yeah, I just recorded another podcast, and one of the things that I said is that when you get your coach title and you
Mhm.
like become a coach, a junior coach, CIT, I think your learning doesn't stop. It actually like
Yeah.
skyrockets. Like you
Learning
have
curve
so
straight
much you
up.
have to learn.
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely. Absolutely. With lots of mess ups along the way.
100%. We're human, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
I think that's also a hard thing as a coach to learn, right? Like you're not going to do everything right.
I would challenge that and say you're going to do most of it wrong when you first get started, like any other job. But if you keep showing up, right? That's the key. Got to keep showing up. You're going to get better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at what point were you like, I really like psychology and I kind of want to explore this mental performance aspect?
That's a great question. So I think I've always been drawn to the mental performance side of things, knowing that your athletes who are quote unquote mentally tough, your athletes who find a way to show up regardless of what's going on, are your athletes who can go the farthest, who are maybe your most successful on paper. But it wasn't until I went to work for Headstrong Consulting, which is a mental performance company here, based here in Salt Lake. And COVID had just happened. I had just moved from Montana to Salt Lake, and the job that I had moved for actually was no longer a thing because of COVID. And I found myself at home with daughters who were suddenly homeschooling because their school was also shut down because of COVID. And I had to find a way to earn an income. At this point, I thought I was retired from coaching. I had owned my own gym for 15 years. I had put in 20 years of coaching, and I thought, I'm satisfied. I'm going to focus on just being a mom and, supporting them in whatever path they take. And as things tend to do when you make a plan, that plan did not work out. And I found Headstrong Consulting when I just did a sports psychology Google search because I have always been interested in it. And I sent Dr. Nicole Detling, who's the owner of Headstrong Consulting, I sent her an email just introducing myself, not really looking for a job, but more just a connection and a network as I was new in Utah. And she said, wow, I would love to meet at some point when, things die down and we're allowed to be face to face again. And unless you have a background in social media, I don't really know what connection I could give you for Headstrong right now. I said, actually, I ran all social media for my gym. So if you need some help with that, I would love to help. So
Yeah.
through doing Headstrong Consulting social media and listening to all of the mental performance tips and tricks that the coaches who work for her were putting out, I thought, this is really good stuff. And I wish I would have known this stuff as I was coaching because I think it would have made me a more impactful coach. And she kind of found that I had a background in cheerleading and dance. So as teams were coming to her who needed some help, maybe with some culture things going on in cheerleading and dance, I started getting that work. And it just came full circle. And I said, I think I want to get my master's in this. I think I know what I want to be when I grow up now that I'm almost 40 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she mentored me through what would be some, good program options for my master's. And almost 3 years ago now, I'm finishing my last year. I dove in headfirst into this sport performance and psychology master's with an emphasis in positive coaching, which that was really appealing to me about this program because I know how impactful the positive coaches in my life have been. I hope I'm not for the athletes that I get the privilege to coach and being able to study exactly what that means and learn not only here's how you can do it, but here's what's happening in these young athletes' brains as you're talking to them, as you're trying to connect with them. That has been such an extra layer of coaching that I didn't even know existed. And I think it's been a little bit of I want to say like a magic tool in my tool belt to be able to not only get the results I'm looking for, but build the relationships that I hope to be able to build with the kids I coach.
Which I think is so key because I mentioned this in a last podcast too, where it's learning or like being able to coach the skills and the drills is one thing, but there is a whole other side of it, which is like communications and patience and professionalism and that ability to create relationships, whether that's with your athletes, your coworkers, your parents, or your gym owner. And all of those are skills that you need to work on and get better at in order to be a good coach.
100%. And I would also say most of us who coach have a pretty good handle on the sport. We're in it because maybe we were pretty good at it ourselves, or we found, oh, I'm pretty good at teaching this. That communication piece, that's the hard part, you know? And so
Yeah.
that takes a lot of work and practice to get good at that. But it's also so key. I mean, it's such a big part of the puzzle that once you improve on that part, I think you find your craft improves as well.
Yeah. And we talk about, mental toughness as athletes, but there is a whole aspect to being mentally tough as a coach.
Absolutely. And mental toughness has such a it's a hot button word. It's easy to throw out there
Yeah.
as "Oh, we got to be mentally tough, but really mental toughness is such an umbrella for so many things, right? It's
Yeah.
resilience, it's grit, it's communication, it's being a good teammate, it's being a good communicator, it's understanding when you have something to learn too. And so this mental toughness piece is I love that coaches dive into it. I just think that there's opportunity for so much more education when it comes to that phrase. And so I hope that that's something now that I have this master's piece and now that I have a deeper understanding, because I've been using the term mental toughness my whole career, right? Going on 27 years. I think I just now understand exactly what that means, though.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that like we have to develop resiliency constantly.
Hmm.
Like you're learning a new skill, you're developing resiliency, you have an issue with a teammate, you're developing patience and communication, right? And there's all those different aspects. And then, like you said, they translate to everything. And then when we think about becoming parents of a child that's an athlete, now there's a whole other level to it.
Well, there's a whole side of mental toughness just being a parent of an athlete.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'm on that side too. My middle daughter, she also is a competitive basketball player. So she does basketball and cheer. My oldest daughter is now graduated and going to college. So I'm backing the sports mom role. And let me tell you, it takes a lot of mental toughness to allow your kid to be coached by somebody else. That's hard. That's hard as a parent.
Yeah. And then so, after you've taken all this stuff, right? So you've been a gym owner, you've been a coach, you are doing your masters, then you decided to write a book.
Yeah.
So can you talk more about like how did that happen? Kind of what sparked that and then what was the process behind it?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you it's not because I had time. I didn't suddenly find myself with a lot of extra time and go, I've always wanted to write this book. This was a passion project for me. My oldest daughter turns 18 actually on Friday. And I always say, I had my gym as my first baby, and then I had my three daughters. And so all
Mhm.
three of my girls were born into a cheerleading gym. And I never wanted them to cheer for me, but I knew it was something, especially having girls. I was like, they're going to want to do this. I mean, they're here every day. They're spoiled rotten by all the athletes in the gym. Like who wouldn't want to be part of like just being doted on? So she started cheering when I think she competed for the first time at 2, because this was back before they had the age restrictions of like, you got to be 3, you got to be an old
Yeah.
lady at 3 to be able to compete. So I think she hit the mat for the first time at 2. And then I was so lucky to share her entire competitive journey with her through her junior year of high school. And then she came to me and was like, Mom, I really want to try this D1 world. And the gym that I'm a director at, we're D2. And I
Yeah.
kind of always wondered if she would be drawn to that because it's not something I had ever been able to provide her with. I happen to be really good friends with the owners of Rival Athletics, which is where she decided to go. And to her, I was like, let's go full send. To my husband, I'm like, oh my God, she's leaving me. I can't believe it's her senior year and I don't get to coach her. And what I was really nervous for, as far as kind of letting her go and spread her wings, and also selfishly sad about not getting to coach her senior year, ended up being what I would say is one of the greatest seasons we've ever had together. And we've had a lot of really good seasons together. But I found
Yeah.
myself back in this role of just mom, right? It wasn't my job to coach her. It wasn't my job to correct her. It wasn't my responsibility to make sure that she's winning and happy. I just had to love her. And we found ourselves on long plane rides to NCA and cheer sport. And as she would, conk out on the plane as teenagers tend to do, I kind of just started jotting down notes about what this year means to me. It was a little bit of therapy for me. And also, what kind of parent do I want to be for her? What kind of parent do I want to be for her coaches? What have I learned in my master's? What have I learned from being on the other side of this as owner, director, coach? And I didn't tell anybody I was doing this because I thought it would sort of just be a journal therapy session.
Yeah.
And then I started kind of going, I wonder if this is maybe a book. And I was outlining little chapters. And then on the way to Nashville for One Up, which my gym was going as well. So we were both going. She was going to compete. I was going to work. I had my other two daughters with me. I connected to the Wi Fi on the airplane and I sent it to my husband. I said, this might be garbage. And please tell me if it is. I think I might have written a book. And it was silent for maybe an hour. And because it was just an outline, it wasn't, fully completed or anything. And he writes
Yeah.
back, no joke, I think you have something here. And it was like, well, that was almost scarier. It would have been almost easier if he said, no, this is just, let's keep it between us. And he said, there's nothing like this for parents. I think you should develop it. So I spent the next 2 weeks just head down. All right, let's see what I can do. And then a couple months later, I had a book in hand and very, very nervously put it out to my network and could not be more appreciative of the reception that it has received. I'm so grateful to everybody who has bought a book and the feedback that I've gotten. And I think that if nothing else, it's good thoughts and it's good reminders that this parenting role is hard, but we also have a responsibility to work at it in the same way that our athletes have a responsibility to work at their sport so that everybody enjoys their whole athletic career as much as possible.
I love that so much. Okay, I want to dive into more topics because it was great. I read it. It was like
Oh, thank
quick
you.
and short. I'm a pretty fast reader, and I think I read it in about like hour and a half, 2 hours. So
That's
like it was,
awesome. Thank you.
yeah. And there was a lot of topics that I think applied to a coach as well. So I think it's
Good.
not just specific to a parent. There was a lot of tidbits that even as a coach, I was like, oh wait, I want to make sure that I put that in, right?
Okay. Well, that's great
So
feedback. I haven't heard that yet. So thank you.
yeah. Okay, so with that, you talk about there being three roles. So the coach, the athlete, and the parent, and that they are three distinct roles. So can you touch on those a little bit more?
Yes. And that is so important. And it's so easy for those lines to get blurred. I know as a parent, sometimes I don't think the coach is doing their best job, right? Sometimes as a
Yeah.
parent, it's really easy to go, why doesn't the coach see that you need to be there, right? Or that you could do that better than that athlete or whatever. And so what happens when those lines get blurred is it causes a whole bunch of confusion for everybody, right? Mostly the athlete. So when we can keep the three roles defined, which is it is the coach's job to coach and correct and instruct the athlete. It is the parent's job to support the athlete, love the athlete, and be nothing more than a support system. And it is the athlete's job to learn, right? When those three jobs stay separate, it's like harmony, it's unity for the athlete's world. And as simple as that sounds, it's actually very, very hard to do because you have parents who have been coaches. You have parents who have played that sport. You have kids who defer more to their parents than their coach. You have coaches who maybe are brand new and honestly, if we're being honest, messing up a bunch. And so as parents, we have to go, is it really necessary for me to step in here? Or maybe they're not going to learn exactly what I want them to learn, but are they going to be okay? Are they safe? Are they becoming independent? Are they becoming confident in their skills? Are they learning things outside of the X's and O's like leadership and being a good teammate and how to listen and how to show up on time? Those are the questions we have to ask ourselves.
Yeah. And then you also touch on the idea of support versus pressure,
Mhm.
and that pressure from those parents or adults in their life can, unintentionally impact the athlete, and not just like their skills. It can impact like their mental health, their confidence, relationships. So how does that play into it?
So there's, again, what sounds simple and it's hard to do. But as parents, it's really easy for us to say, in the terms of cheerleading, you guys need to hit today. You just need to hit. You know you can do it. You think you're being supportive. You know you can do it. You just need to. But starting a sentence with you need to instantly puts some pressure on that athlete rather than what are you feeling confident about today? What do you hope happens out on the mat today? What teammate are you most excited for today to see how they do on the mat? Simply changing the way that questions are asked and maybe even not asking questions, which is really hard, especially when we have teenagers who sometimes they only talk to us when we ask questions. Letting that silence breathe a little bit is really fine. They might be, and chances are they are already going through all this up here, right? So when we as parents start to 20 question bombard, 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 we might be messing up something that they're already naturally doing to prepare for their event. If you feel like you have to talk, rather than leading a sentence with, you guys need to, I hope you, and unintentionally placing that pressure on the athlete, open ended questions. What are you most excited for today? And keeping it away from result oriented questions helps ease that pressure so much.
Yeah, I love that. I know for my teams this year, we have a no results goals.
Love
It
it.
is all things that we can control, right?
Yes.
So, like, how much work are we putting in before practice? What are we doing at home? How are we holding each other accountable? Because I love the saying that was like, you don't earn your result at a competition, you earn it at practice and you pick up your medal.
Yes. Yes. And the thing is, especially in a sport like cheerleading, the results are they're so unpredictable. While there's so much work to keep the subjectivity out of the sport, at the end of the day, this is a judged sport. So you can put your best product out there and sometimes not get the results that you were hoping for. And so the less their satisfaction relies on results, the more they're going to enjoy the experience.
Yeah. And I think also with enjoying it and support and pressure comes developing that growth mindset. So, like, being able to recover quicker. And also the fact that, like, we're able to have a positive outlook or in hard moments be like, okay, this is just one part of me. So then what can parents do or coaches or athletes do in terms of that growth mindset?
So, one of the best ways that we can help our athletes develop confidence is to help them realize what they did well on their worst days. We as humans want to focus on everything we did wrong. It's way easier than finding what we did well, right? If I sit here and and I ask you, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? The weaknesses are going to be what come to your mind first. It's just kind of the way we're wired. And so it's no different in sports. When I ask my daughters, hey, how'd it go? I couldn't hit this, that, I missed my shots, blah, blah, blah. Well, what did you do well? Do you feel like you did anything well? That's a lot harder, even though their coach can probably list off 10 things immediately that they thought they did well. So helping athletes build confidence comes from helping them see what they do well. Not that it's all rainbows and unicorns and we don't have anything to work on, because that's obviously you also have to be willing to take an honest look at your game and your sport and say, I need to improve here. But the way you're willing to take the risks to work on what you're not so good at is by remembering what you are good at. So simply journaling after every practice. I just put this challenge out yesterday to the teams I coach. Hey, after every practice and tumbling session, write down 3 things you think you did really well and one thing you want to work on. One thing you want to work on sounds a little bit different than one thing that you didn't do well, because I want to work on it. Maybe I did it well, but I still want to work on it. But oh my gosh, yeah, I did do my set drills really well. Oh yeah, I did throw my full on the floor. Oh, my standing tuck hit 3 times when I bombed 5 of them the practice before. Living in the headspace of I'm good enough to be here helps you take risks to continue to improve as an athlete.
Yeah. And also making it that those things that to improve on don't have to necessarily be skills either, right? Like, it could be remembering my spot or remembering my routine,
Hmm.
or it's, I didn't handle that situation with my teammate the greatest. And so next time I want to be able to support them better.
Right. Yeah. Or I was the loudest on the mat during our full out. My mat talk was amazing today. Those are intangibles that are so important to a whole team dynamic, especially as we get into full out season. So, yeah, that's a great point and something that, you kind of answered your own question as far as what can coaches do there. What's not skill related that you're doing well? It takes a full, well rounded athlete to add to a team.
Yeah. I love that so much. And I also, you had a quote in the book that I absolutely loved, which was, the goal isn't to avoid hard moments. The goal is to build an athlete who can handle it.
Yes. I think we all know life is full of hard moments, right? So if we're doing our job as coaches and sport is building better people, we know those people are going to hit hard moments in their life. So what can they look back on that they learned through sport to handle that moment in life.
I love that. Now, we've talked a lot about communication being key, and that is one part in your book that's massive. And
Mhm.
the fact of like how and what you say to the coach, to the athlete, in front of the athlete, it was all super important. So, what are some ways as we are going into the new season that parents can help support a healthy relationship between their athlete, their coach, and them?
That's a great question. So, unfortunately, and I touch on this at the end of every chapter, which is why I have a car ride rule, a rule for the road. So many athletes quit their sport because of the car ride home. And I think if parents understood the gravity of that moment in the car, nobody would ever intentionally do what we do to our children, right? And so having questions on hand, which is why I put all those at the end of every chapter. If nothing else, take this, write this down, is so important. Simply, did you have fun? What did you do well? And my favorite one, and I tell every parent ever, just write this down. I love watching you cheer. I love watching you play. And let them lead the conversation. Really, they should lead where that goes. If they want to break down the game, the competition, there's some athletes who really love to do that, who value their parents' opinion. That's fine. It's not like it's completely off limits and you're not allowed to talk about it, but they have to lead that. And they might want to dive into that sometimes. And sometimes they might just want to say, yeah, I had fun. And if, again, letting that silence breathe is so important, most of the time they'll come back around to it. But a coworker of mine at Headstrong, he had such a great visual of this. Think about a hard day's work for you, and you're finally done with your day's work, and you go and you get into your car and you get into the driver's seat, and your boss opens up that passenger door and just keeps telling you everything that you messed up on that day at work. That's what we do to our kids sometimes without even realizing that we're doing it. But if your boss got in the car and said, "Hey, I just really appreciate you, and I think you're doing a great job," well, suddenly your bad day doesn't seem so bad, right? Like, okay, I guess I'll go back tomorrow. I'm not as big of a failure as I thought. They're already thinking all of the things. Sometimes they just need to hear, did you have fun? I love watching you play, you know?
Yeah. And then how are ways that then the parent can create that relationship that's positive with the coach?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the 24-hour rule, and I'm sure you are too as a coach.
Yep.
Yes, that 24 and even that's for me too. I mean, not just from a parent perspective, right? But there are sometimes as a coach that I just want to fire off a text or respond really quickly to an email that the next morning doesn't seem as off-putting or aggressive as it did that night after a full 6 hours of coaching. And so taking that time to breathe and really define what the goal is and clarifying the argument. So, seeking to understand, I talk about this a lot. If the coach, if the parent can come to the table with the athlete in mind and seeking to understand what the goals of the athlete are, it keeps conversation so much more productive, so much less emotional. And a lot of times that can only happen after about 24 hours. So, my biggest piece of advice to parents is wait, see what your athlete has to say, think about what your goal is, and then approach the coach in a time that's not bombarding them right after practice or right after a game or right after a competition so that everybody comes to the table with a cool head and your athlete's best interest in mind.
I love that. I like to say that parents want the best for their kid. And as a coach, I want the best for my athlete.
Mhm.
So, how can we meet in the middle and say, how can we support their development? Because we're both on the same page.
100%. And I always say, I'm such a different coach now than I was. And a lot of that is the education that I've had and also being a parent now for a long time. Every parent wants what's best for their kid. And so if we can remember that as coaches, maybe the delivery is not great. Maybe this parent's coming in a little hot. They're advocating for their child. This is their prized possession. This is somebody who is the most important human in the world to them that they entrust us with. So when you kind of remember that, it's a little bit easier to maybe take those low blows that come in those conversations of they're advocating for the child, they're advocating for their child. This is not as personal as it feels.
Yeah, and I think summertime and training is the perfect chance to pause and get to know that coach. Like your athlete is about to spend hours upon hours with this person. So getting to know who they are helps that. right? And it also helps you see them as a human. And I think that also the same thing happens with coaches, like getting to know your parents. And it doesn't have to be deep, but but knowing like, okay, this is their name, this is their child,
Mhm.
having those conversations, getting to know what their family structure looks like. Are they divorced? Do they co parent? Really helps you be like, okay, pause, take a breath,
Mhm.
and then we're going to go from here. And I totally agree. The
100%.
24-hour rule is like the and I use it in my business. It is
Yeah.
the gold standard for everything. I'm like, nope, this is not going to be productive or better for this relationship if I respond right now.
100%. My daughters always make fun of me. They're like, Mom, you're always yapping. But I make it a point when I walk into the gym to try to say hi to everybody. And as coaches, a lot of times it's heads down. I'm going through this practice. We got to get through this. And it's easy to come across as super standoffish. So just eyes up, a smile, a wave. Hey, how's it going? To the mom sitting at the front. That goes a long way. These are parents who are choosing to support your business and who are choosing to bring their children to you to get better. A smile and a wave is the least we can do to connect with them.
Yeah. I heard something that it was like, I don't know if it was your book, if it was someone else, but it was like the average person spends like $4,000 a season
Mm.
on their child. And it's like they have an expectation and they have an expectation of like the service that's being provided for them. And I think for coaches, sometimes we can get very much into that silo and mindset of like, oh, I just coach. But like you
Right.
sometimes have to take a step back and be like, no, I'm a part of a business
Yes.
and I'm a part of this process and I need to consider where I fall in that process. And like, am I helping it or am I hurting? Because, like you said, coming off really standoffish isn't going to want to make more kids join your team. It's not
Right.
going to want to make more families bring their friends.
Right. I tell the coaches that I work with all the time, everything you do is either going to help build the culture that we want or work against the culture that we want. There's not a lot of in between there. And that's a big responsibility for coaches to know every time I step on this mat and do my job, there's a lot riding on that. It's a big responsibility to be a coach, but it's also such a gift to be a coach. And I think living in that gratitude of that gift helps you be a little more willing to connect and stay after and yap, as my daughters will tell me. So I do know them as people and not just that Sally's mom, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you talk about culture, which I think is so important and I want to touch on it.
Yeah.
So, what are some things that coaches can do to help that culture?
Consistency. I preach consistency till I'm blue in the face. If we don't have consistency as coaches, we don't have anything. And consistency is hard sometimes because it's not always what the parents are necessarily looking for. And consistency doesn't always mean the same thing for every athlete. But when we hold consistent expectations and consistent standards, it's really easy to stand up behind those. If we're flighty in those and if we're wishy washy in those standards, it's really easy for the parents to see the holes and the gaps, and they're not wrong. You did this here, and now my athlete's being held here, and I don't have a reason to explain that. But if it's my athlete's being held here, yes, she is. And so is this one, and so is this one, and so is this one. It's so much easier to keep everybody calm. And I always say, you might not like my answer, but I'm going to tell you the answer because it's going to be the same no matter who I'm talking to. So be
Yeah,
consistent. That's your biggest gift. That's your biggest secret tool.
I love that. And then a lot of parents don't realize how much of an impact that they can have, whether it's a team culture or a gym culture. So, especially as we head into a new season where we have different teams, we have different parents, what are ways that parents can start off on the right foot to help that culture move forward?
I think the biggest thing parents can do is take a deep breath. It's hard, especially in our sport, because a lot of times we go summit right into new tryouts. We're all still in that summit headspace. We're all still in that push and that grind. Everybody's expecting these new teams to look exactly what they look like a couple weeks ago on the summit mat, forgetting that we're meshing a brand new team together, sometimes with new coaches, and it takes some time. If you're watching the last 10 minutes of practice and your athlete isn't exactly where they need to be as far as your standards go, just take a deep breath and know that the coaches are going to get them there. there's a process, there's a learning curve. There's no time limit. We don't compete in June, not over here, right? We're not competing. In fact, if we're competing early, we're competing in November. And we
Yeah.
want everybody to mess up a billion times between now and November so that when November comes, we're ready to rock. And so honestly, I would say if you're a parent who really struggles with the beginning of the season, drop your kid off and go get a coffee. Let their learning curve happen without feeling that you're stressed out about what their team's going to look like in June.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I love that so much. Yeah, I think it, and it's one of those things too that cheerleading specifically, but it happens in every sport, is one of those ones that we go all in, right? Like we sign up for every clinic, we sign up for the tumbling classes, we sign up for the practices, we go to this, we go to that. Now we're at competitions every weekend. But I love that in the book you talk about being a multi-sport athlete, because I think that's incredible and there's so many benefits to that.
Mhm.
But I also think that when your identity is tied to the sport, you have a really hard time transitioning.
Mhm.
And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think very sadly, we've all seen an athlete's season end like that, whether it's an ACL, a broken bone, a sickness, a move. When this is all they have, it's really a scary place for them to be because they grasp onto it with every ounce of their being rather than knowing I am Becky, who happens to be a cheerleader, who also happens to be a sister, who also happens to be a friend and somebody who loves going to movies and shopping. And sadly, I feel like we've lost a lot of that. And this is where I differ a lot from not just cheerleading coaches, but youth sport coaches. I am not a believer in early specialization at all. I think it's too hard on their bodies. But even more than that, I think it teaches them that that's who they have to be no matter what. And it doesn't allow them to really take time to see what they're good at and where they thrive. And so when we have athletes who come to us in our gym and say, I really want to cheer, but I'm in a play over this competition weekend, I say, awesome. We're going to find a reserve for you so that you can go be in that play too. And thanks for being here for the rest of those competitions. Or, hey, I've got a basketball tournament over nationals and I don't know what to do. Okay, which one do you want to do? Well, I want to do basketball or I want to do cheer. Let's figure that out. We have other athletes who are just chomping at the bit for an opportunity to show that they can do this level 4 routine. This weekend of your basketball tournament is a chance for this athlete to step up, and you also get to go do what you need to do. That is so different. And I know how different. And I butt heads with people over this all of the time. But I have seen the kids whose season has ended like this and they don't know who they are. And then I've seen the kids whose season have ended like this and they're still okay. They're devastated that their season is over, but they remember that they're a human being outside of their sport. And as coaches, I feel deeply, strongly, and profoundly that we have a responsibility to allow our kids to have an identity outside of our sport because the amount of our kids that we coach that will go on to be professionals is this big, right? Like it's so small. And so, who are they when all this is over? They have to know that. And we have to help them find that. That's our job.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot in the episode with Caitlin Harvey, and she was a
Mhm,
22-year cheerleading athlete and 11-year Team Canada premier athlete. And she retired and she talked about the idea of grief,
mhm,
that it is actually, you are going through grief when you either your season ends or you are in your senior year, you're in your last competition season, and you decide to leave the sport at that point.
mhm.
And for, like you mentioned, a lot of people, it is like, who am I? What am I doing? And it even comes down to like, how do I work out? How do
Yep.
I actually enjoy activity? Right? It was, what do I do with my free time?
Yes.
What do I eat? Because eating as an athlete is very different, right? So yeah, I
Absolutely.
I think that's so important.
My daughter who's a senior, she actually is going to be a part of CBU Stunt next year. And she, even having that on the horizon, her all-star experience ending, it really was sad for her because it's the ending, it's the closing of a chapter, even with something fun on the horizon. And so, what happens to our kids who don't have that next opportunity, right? What are we talking to them about and what are we teaching them as that close is coming so that they're going to be okay. I think about every year as a coach when summit ends, I'm sad. I'm going back in a couple weeks and I'm still sad because these teams meant something to me. So we can't undervalue the importance and the time and the commitment that this sport holds to these kids, but we can teach them that that can still be a really special part of their life while having other special parts of their life.
Yeah. And then also, I think it is one of those things where, as an adult, we have the emotional regulation tools.
Hmm.
But as a child, they're learning that, right? So being able to teach them those tools will set them up for success in every aspect of their life.
Absolutely. And the conversations that we have leading up to the end of a season, knowing we have seniors graduating, we have kids who might not be coming back for a variety of reasons. So what do our conversations as coaches and gym owners sound like with these kids to help prep them for what we know is going to be an emotional gut punch when that 2 minutes and 30 seconds ends for the last time that season?
Okay, so with that, we're going to transition a little bit away from the book,
Okay.
which is incredible. And anyone who has not read it, definitely go read it. I'm going to link the link to purchase in the show notes so that you can go check it out.
Awesome.
But in terms of your career, so now we're thinking about your transitioning to that coaching,
Hmm.
maybe you're transitioning to another role within the industry. In your experience, what has stood out as being the most impactful way of finding and then going after opportunities?
I think the more time you can spend learning from those around you, the more opens your eyes to what you're actually interested in. And I've been here as a coach. We forget sometimes that we have things to learn too. And so I try
Yeah.
really hard. I'm really lucky I get to coach with several different people because I coach a handful of teams. So I try every practice to think of one thing I learned from my co-coach. Even though I'm older than them and even though I'm kind of the grandma in the gym, they were in the sport as an athlete much more recently than I was. So while maybe I wouldn't teach that grip that way, why are you teaching it that way? And what can I learn from you? Right. Or, oh, I really like how you connected with that kid who was having a hard time. I'm going to remember that. Just last night, I was working with a coach who I don't typically get to work with. We're just playing with some pyramid transitions and it was a mess. I mean, it was just an absolute mess. And we kept trying and trying. And he goes, no rep is a bad rep right now. It's summer. And I clocked that in my memory because what a great saying. No rep is a bad rep right now. It relieves all the pressure from the kids. It empowers them to keep trying again. At least it's a rep. And so finding those tidbits from people around you, studying, listening to podcasts, reading books, like literally, we have so much information at our fingers now as coaches. What coaches groups are you a part of? What conferences can you get to? I don't know how you know what you want until you know what's out there. And so being aware of everything that's out there really might open up opportunity you didn't even know you wanted.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, and conferences and webinars and things like those
Hmm.
cannot be understated. Like, I think a lot of people will be like, oh, yeah, okay, maybe next year. And it's like, no, there's like, I always view it as that's my work for 2 days. And I always say, like, I'm like, it's incredible that I get paid to go learn cheerleading for 2 days. Like, that's exciting to me. And so, like, you're putting all of these incredible people into one room and like soak it up like a sponge.
Yeah.
Like, you might not use it, like, and you might not use it for 3 years, but like soak up as much information as you can.
Well, and how fired up are you when you get back from those things? I'm like, oh, I can't wait to coach. Right. And then I feel like my team's always like, whoa, she's like shot out of a cannon because of everything that you get to learn in those conferences. And people say things in ways that you're like, I've never thought of it that way. So, yeah, I could not agree with you more. The more conferences you can get to, the better.
Yeah. And now, if you weren't doing your current role,
Mhm.
what other role in cheerleading or youth sports would you want to do?
Oh, that's a great question. I joke all the time when I feel like I am failing as a cheerleading coach that I like basketball. I should have gone into basketball. But that's just what I say to myself to make myself feel better. I don't know that I could do anything other than coach. So I feel like if it weren't cheerleading, it would be a different sport. I love basketball. I love volleyball, but I also love soccer and baseball. I'm just an absolute passionate human when it comes to sports. But, I actually wrote a paper on this and it was, why do you coach? And because I can do nothing else. And it's not that I'm not capable of doing anything else. It's just my calling. So I would be coaching in
Yeah,
some form or another.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's the people who have that passion really stand out, right? And as you talk about it, it's like you like glow, right? As someone who is
Yeah.
like passionate about the things that you want. And I think that being able to create a life where you get to do all the things you love and be able to teach those things really makes a massive impact and leaves a big impact on the people that you work with.
Yes, absolutely. I cannot agree more.
Okay, so my final question, which I asked to all of my guests,
Okay.
which is if you think back to like 16-year-old Becky and all the things, even 18-year-old when you started to coach,
Mhm.
what do you wish that someone would have told you about all the things that you were going to experience?
I don't think I realized the emotional commitment coaching requires. And it took me a long time to understand the passion and the impact and the connection it takes to really do your best job. So I think I would have always known I could be a good coach, but I don't think I knew until probably 10 years into my career what that meant from a connection perspective to the athletes that I work with. So
I love that so much.
yeah, just be prepared for the emotional commitment you're going to feel to all these kids who stand in front of you.
Yeah. I think it's very understated within the coaching community how much we think about other people's kids.
Mhm.
Like, I'll be like, oh, I wonder how their test went, or I know that they broke up with their partner.
Yeah.
I wonder how they're doing, right? And there's so much, even like, I know your family is going through a divorce, and
Mhm.
like, that's in the back of my mind.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, even when you asked me that question, I had to like swallow the lump in my throat because it was like a flip book of 27 years of every face. You know what I mean? And so it's that I never would have guessed. And I used to make fun of my coaches for getting emotional, like at the end of seasons and stuff, like, oh my gosh. And now my teams just laugh at me. We come, April comes around and I'm like, just ending a practice, like, I'm just proud of you guys. And they're like, oh, here we go. It's like, y'all don't even get it though. Like watching your journey and watching who you've become and everything that you've accomplished, not just skills wise, but as humans, it's amazing that I get to be a part of that.
Yeah, totally agree. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
Make sure to tune back for our next episode where we're answering the question, what happens after the routine ends?